Okay, so hello and welcome to the Grandmentors Lewisham podcast. I'm Naota, I'm the project coordinator for Grandmentors Lewisham. What is Grandmentors, you might ask? Well, Grandmentors is an intergenerational mentoring program for care experienced young people aged 16 to 25 years old, which supports the transition of leaving the care system and the pathway to independence. We're recording here from a cold but sunny Lewisham. We're in the borough today, and I'm alongside my co-host Indiana. Hi, Indiana. Hi. Who was a Lewisham care leaver some years ago, and we're also joined by some of our mentees and mentors who are part of the Grand Mentors program here in Lewisham, and we'll be hearing from all of them today about their experiences. This podcast has been co-produced with Grand Mentors mentees and ambassadors of the Lewisham Elevation Group, and they've led on the key topics that we'll be discussing today. We've also got Mana here today. Mana is the participation manager for Lewisham and does amazing work to support the Care Leaver Forum, which is the Elevation Group, and the Children in Care Council. And Mana leads on Youth Voice and empowering youth to be more involved in system change and development of homes, skills and confidence across the board. Good morning. We've got an amazing panel of people in the room today, so let's get stuck in and have a chat. We'll kickstart today with something the Lewisham Elevation Ambassadors felt was really important to discuss, and that's something that's described as the care cliff. Has anyone heard that term before, the care cliff?
Haven't heard the term, no.
Okay, so
I think I understand what it is, though.
Okay, so I'll give you a definition. So the care cliff is the term used to describe the abrupt drop in support and expectations of independence that young people face when they leave care, often at the age of 18. This can lead to young people being at higher risk of poverty, homelessness, and mental ill health.
Bearing in mind the definition you've heard, do you think care leavers can be best supported to transition into adulthood from leaving care? And what things do you think could be done to prevent care cliff?
I've not heard of the care cliff before, but from your definition, I know what it is and I've experienced it, and I know a lot of other young people have experienced it too. But to my knowledge, I think that more communication between children's social care and adult social care should be a thing, and working together in the best interest of the young person, because a lot of things get lost in translation. And, how do you expect the young person to know everything at that age if you don't tell them? And if you can't work together, how do you expect for the person to know anything? So I think that's a big thing. And just having a proper handover would be great, and it would go a long way in my experience.
I was wondering if maybe people who've known the young person while they're in care, having some sort of transitional role where they're still with them a little bit, maybe arm's length, but the handover idea, that there's some continuity so that the person who knows the young person liaises with the new person or mentor or personal assistant or whoever is coming in to play with that young person. So there's some sort of continuity and exchange of the information, I suppose, that's been learned. So you're not just dropped off a cliff. You're in a continuum.
I totally agree with that as well. It is actually about that transition from being a child looked after to then going into leaving care. Where if you don't have a smooth transition between that period, especially for example, you might have the social worker who's working alone on different parts of that child's pathway plan, and then the PA is then doing their own parts, and it's like, actually you should be working jointly together and with that child in mind, because that child is now actually a young person who can also make their own decisions. And it's also about thinking about, okay, how are we working together to empower that young person to make informed decisions, and how are we supporting that transition? So, for example, something that I've started doing at Lewisham is when we do hold care leaver events, actually invite those that are 16 plus, because it's actually at the age 16 that you start that preparation to start transitioning over to the leaving care team. And if you're already having those introductions to personal advisors leaving care service, care leavers, and you're actually accessing your peers, it gives you a better opportunity to also feel like, okay, less anxiety. I know some of these people now, and I can kind of see how that service works. Because if you're just thrown in it, you're going to be like, oh my gosh, what's going on? So it's about how are you actually properly preparing them rather than just throwing them in at 18.
I think an ideal dose of reality would probably prove to be very beneficial for a care leaver. I think a lot of the care experience is constrained by the boundaries of professionalism, which means you don't get a proper taste for reality. And this also kind of leans into then what will happen then after. You will feel a lack of meaning or purpose, which then will then deprive you of motivation, causing you to not want to really pursue much beyond those boundaries, simply because you then don't have many experiences in and around those things. A large portion of what happens in care feels very sterile, even with almost everyone you meet. It's very professional, and that kind of then will then propagate on a lot of the things you then do after. Life will feel very strange, viewing the fact that in terms of your interactions on a regular basis, a large amount of it is very monitored, and it almost feels like you're in a laboratory of sorts, just simply because how you will then go on to interact with everyone you meet. So I feel like having something that would then give that opportunity to a person before and even after care will then actually offer them a lot more in terms of what they are then capable of, given those prospects of, well, for adulthood, I suppose.
Further to what was just said, I definitely agree. A lot of the things, they're not done with a relationship. Like, it's so professional, it doesn't feel genuine at times. And it's important, I think, for professionals to develop a relationship with the young person. Because I don't know, can't speak for everybody, but in my own experience, I've had personal advisors who have seen me once and then I've never seen them again. And I've not known that my case has been dropped and I've been transferred to this person and that person. And it gets hard to keep up with it. At least have the common decency to tell me that you're going to go, you know? And it's a thing of the lack of communication, the lack of respect, the lack of mutual whatever. You know what I mean? It's not very, it's so bureaucratic, it doesn't feel real. And I think just being able to relate to the young person on a level is important, and just showing that respect as they are a young person, not a child anymore. And I just think you're not working for that person, you're working with that person. And that's what's missing. I just think that's the main thing, is just developing a relationship.
And I think that's something where this program is actually quite beneficial. So I know with talking to my mentee, her perception of her interactions with like the system is very, very, like you said, it's very professional. And she certainly hasn't felt supported in a lot of cases, because she just feels like there's just this process that you have to go through. And even when people are, even like medical people, like the doctor and stuff, is trying to be helpful, she doesn't feel, what you said, I think, was like, it's like a professional relationship. You don't feel like it's actually helping you, a sort of personal feeling. So I think, so something that I've done has been to try to support my mentee when she's having those interactions with bureaucracy, because otherwise she just finds it like really overwhelming, really personal, quite difficult to manage.
I think it doesn't make a lot of sense, does it, really, to have somebody who is almost managed like from cradle to grave by a group of people who are very impersonal, and then at 18, okay, you're on your own now. It would make sense to me to have something like Grandmentors come into play maybe 6 months before they get to the 18, and they build a relationship with that mentor, and then they transition and go on from there with somebody who is going to treat them like an individual, not a unit within or a number within the system, and then will be a point of contact for them, because you're 18, you know nothing, you've done nothing half the time, and you've been in a system that doesn't really value you, dare I say it. And I think a mentor then be very, very handy to have as somebody who cares about you as an individual and will work with you on the basics of life. Somebody who's been there, done it, and is not going to worry or stress about somebody who's going to give them a hard time because they lack understanding. When you have a cliff and you want to get to the other side, you need a bridge. So we need somebody to be that bridge for the young person, ideally before they get to the edge of the cliff. So 6 months, a year, Grandmentors possibly could introduce somebody as that person that's going to take them to the other side of the bridge. Somebody who is not going to be functional, somebody who is empathetic, somebody who is got really good listening skills and practical experience of life, which I'm sure the big mentors around here have, and will be able to help that person transition into a useful, productive life, which is what they really want, but they don't know how to do it. Because really, when you're in the care system, I'm sorry, but from the people I've seen go through the system, it's like a production line. And that's not useful for anybody who's an emotional person. They need somebody who's going to be able to hold their hand as if they were those parents that these people never had, and give them the guidance they need to get to the other side in one piece without falling into that or off that cliff.
In my experience as a care leaver, I definitely agree that it is needed. I've worked so much better with people who have given me their time and have, as opposed to professionals like PAs or social workers. And it's been so much more helpful just having somebody to relate to me, have a relationship, develop a relationship with me, and just be honest and real about adulthood or what needs to be done. I feel like in the system, you can get so trapped in tick boxes. A lot of social workers and PAs have to go by guidelines and they're restricted. And it's almost as if you're talking to a robot sometimes, you know? And I think that's not really been very helpful. As much as they have to do their job, and I can respect that, there's also a layer to it where you're not able to treat us like human beings. We're like a project that you have to fix or make into a box. And I don't agree with that. I think it makes your social skills a lot worse as a care leaver, not knowing what to do and who to trust. A lot of us do not trust people, and that's understandable. And I just think by having Grandmentors or somebody who can try to get onto our level and just talk to us as like with real people is very helpful. Just being honest. A lot of us need just honesty. Not need anything to be sugar coated or walked around on eggshells. I think that is so important because when you treat us like that, we feel so. I mean, I can't talk for everyone, but in my experience, I felt so belittled and just like a working project. And I'm not a working project. We're not working projects. We're people. And I think Grandmentors does help with that.
Yeah, I agree. I just think it's I feel it's very important to then provide some recognition for those PAs and care workers or anyone within the industry that do demonstrate those qualities, because I feel a large measure of it is the fact that it's not really a quality deemed admirable. Well, it is, but it's not given any kind of award or recognition in the fact that like there was awards or ceremonies or meetings or events held for care leavers, but at no point is any social worker that I've at least had given any form of recognition for any effort they may put in to be beyond what they are well, at least at the fundamental level, supposed to be. And I feel that that then doesn't make it a desirable thing to follow. If you solely go along the path of trying to make social workers simply follow a certain course with their young people, prevent certain things, and ensure that certain things are done, those things are then completed, don't really work on the relationship between the PA or the social worker and I'll just say client for the sake of it. I feel that it then doesn't really improve the ability for whoever then comes in to fulfill a role more than what they are then told to do, because it's never at any point awarded or shown any kind of credit in any meeting or event that I've ever been to. So I feel like maybe offering, or at least being able to show some kind of commendation for such an effort would really go a long way in improving even just the morale of that worker, and show them that their efforts are at least meaning something to the people that they are then working with.
Yeah, and something I'm just thinking of as well is that corporate parenting doesn't stop when you turn 18. Corporate parenting continues. So that care cliff, really, we should also, like now we are thinking a lot about the corporate parenting strategy and how our care leavers continuing to receive support and things like that. So obviously working with Grandmentors is making a huge difference to the lives of like our care leavers, and in terms of their growth and their confidence, skills development, the things that their aspirations are growing, they're seeing more potential in themselves. And what I think we need to do as well is find a balance in terms of how we approach the work. So, for example, what these guys are saying about that very professionalism, ticking the boxes, is kind of like, where is that balance where you're actually having a relationship with the young person and you're working with them in a relational way, so that even though you're ticking those boxes, it should be done in a way where you're actually having a relationship and you're working co-productively. That is really what you're supposed to be doing, working co-productively with that young person, so they feel like you're actually empowering them, rather than being like, okay, you've got to do all of these things, and can you cook, can you clean, can you wash up your house and hoover, and okay, great, your independent skills are doing fine, but then sometimes we forget, hold on a minute, what about the emotional aspect? What about the aspect these guys talk about, the social skills? What about all of these things? So for example, how many young people actually know about places like the Big House Theatre, where they do plays that are actually made by care experienced people? So it's also about sharing information with care leavers about all the different places that they can also access and actually build a community, because sometimes we also forget that that community support one another, and that is how their relationship building grows as well. So yeah, we just really need to be thinking about balance within those relationships and not just push on, oh, let's tick these boxes, but actually get to know the young person so that then you can work together to help them into adulthood.
And that really leads quite nicely onto our next question, actually.
In what ways do you think mentoring could support the impact of the care cliff?
Well, following on from what you just said, I just wonder, obviously this is about money, isn't it? But there needs to be some sort of hub in which all this information, where people who've previously been in the system can have, there's got to be some vehicle for communication between people who've had the experience, people who are coming into the experience, sharing and helping and communicating with each other and almost mentoring each other, along with the Grandmentors and whoever else and all these other, because you have so many people involved with you. That's why it's so impersonal. Which one is the one you trust? With just your feelings and difficulties on a day-to-day basis, because that's what anybody at age 18, 19 needs. I mean, yeah.
Don't I say it? That's what anybody needs at any age.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I have people phoning me and I'm phoning people, and I'm in my 60s now. So, people need somebody they can talk to and be honest and open with, not be afraid to talk to, and can say anything they want. No condemnation, no issues at all. There's nobody going to judge them for whatever they say. Everybody needs that. It doesn't matter what age they are. But when you're young and you haven't really got much experience of relationships and life, then you need somebody that you're definitely going to be 100% ironclad trust to say exactly what you want, how you're feeling, and not be afraid to do that.
I mean, it all comes back to building the relationship, doesn't it? And that takes two people time, sharing space and experience and talk and whatever else together. It grows. It's not something you can do to a script or some clinical system.
As I said, it's got to be organic.
Yeah.
And elevation and other young people that are not in elevation as well, something that comes up a lot, and I'm sure Naota, you've heard it so many times, some of you have probably heard it so many times, peer support groups, peer mentoring, and even if, like I was speaking to Naota recently about, hold on, can we do something with Grandmentors where we do train up mentees to a point where they can become mentors themselves to those younger generations and things like that. So it's really thinking about how are we also going to start supporting those younger ones, kind of like what you were saying earlier, getting those mentors in place before they're reaching 18. And then we're thinking about, okay, how are they being supported? So you know how they have independent visitors. You can have an independent visitor, and then you can have your mentor, and you can have your mentor later, because then you have that continuous support, and it's not like you're just falling at the end of that cliff.
I want to share just a couple of quotes actually from some of our Grandmentors mentees. I cannot be bothered with a lot, and my mentor never gives up on me. She's lovely and inspires me, even when I think I can't do it. She believes in me and wants the best for me. My mentor supports me with the parts I find difficult to progress into and inspires me. She's helped me to grow and develop for the better. She's been like the engine to my car, motivating and pushing me to accelerate and do better. And another one is the benefits of having a mentor have been positive because my PA and social worker have changed a lot. Having a reliable role model that I don't have to worry about changing and telling my life story to again and again is good. And that's been something that I've heard a lot, having to kind of share your story again and again. And just having someone consistent that knows you, that's there for you can get to know is a slightly different relationship. And I guess that leads on to the next question.
Thinking about your own experiences as mentees, what has been the impact of having a mentor to help you gain more independence and with your transition on the pathway to care, to leaving care?
In my experience, I think having a grand mentor has been so important because my mentor has allowed space for me to be open and honest with her, and for her to provide me with like practical support, and just being able to relate as an adult. Personally, I've struggled with social interaction and things like that, and adjusting into the adult world, and she's helped give advice, and I really appreciate that because it's not everybody that could do that and be honest with you on a level, because she's given up her free time at the end of the day to spend time with me off of her back, and I appreciate that. And it just goes to show that some people are really kind out there, and that are willing to support us with no gain whatsoever. And that's important because growing up as a person in care, it's just like professionals are just always there, and you don't know their intentions at the end of the day. So it's quite difficult to trust, but you can appreciate when somebody wants to do that, chooses to do that and gets nothing from it. And that's encouraged me to want to try to help other people, especially younger people as well. So
I find that my mentor, he accommodates what it is that I feel that I need to actually be able to pursue what it is that I've always wanted to do. He knows that my perspective really revolves around the fact that I find that meaning or purpose is the canvas on which I paint my life, and nothing really has meaning if it were not for those two primary points to why I do what I do. And he understands the aims that I have, the aims that differentiating my days doesn't make them any better or any worse. It's just giving me the tools to want to go from one to the next and pursue what it is that I want to do. I find that with his help, while he may never be able to truly resolve any issues that I may have, it's his ability to understand what it is that I am tackling and then help me pursue them through whatever hardship that may be. That is then what makes his efforts very valuable to me, no matter if they are futile or not. So I find having that consistency to be able to interact with someone on a regular basis is the main primary benefit, and something that you'll find that you may be lacking coming out of a care would be that consistency, given that through whatever circumstances that are subjective and different for every individual, you may find those things to be lacking. And if those are your primary driving motivations, then those motivations need to be fulfilled somehow. And I find that what he offers is, well, very helpful.
I would just say to your earlier point, your mentor doesn't get nothing out of the interaction with you. It's my experience has been fun and also really interesting and rewarding to have that kind of relationship with somebody who's had challenges and to get insight into their experience and to like see things that it's very, very positive. That's my experience has been. So it's not like everybody's just doing it out of the goodness of their heart, also doing it because it's actually quite interesting and fun and rewarding.
Second that.
I was going to say something about, not being a mentor or a mentee, but I feel like if I became a mentor, just to know that that young person could call me or could text me if they needed something or they needed some help with paying council tax is one of the most stressful things in life. So to have a young person and just to be like, this is what you got to do, make sure you do it before this day. If you need some help, then just to have that person just there, it would have just made that headache just not such a headache. It would have been a headache, but just to have that extra support, just someone being there, like, it's going to be okay. Yeah, you've done that wrong, but it's all right, So I feel like, it's very rewarding. And I think maybe I'll be a mentor one day because, it does seem very rewarding. Yeah.
Actually, I was going to say that it's it seems. I mean, I've only just started this journey, but it seems to me that that issue about something that really simple
Yeah.
that some people struggle with because they lack the confidence to interact with the system in a way that they weren't before, because the system was doing everything for them, and now they have to get the system to do things for them, and that's hard for some people to do.
I think like it's hard, full stop. I mean, it's really, really frustrating. And my experience has just been, it's like time after time after time, so like helping with a benefits application that got lost. And we didn't find out for like 6 weeks. And now I have to start again. And, it's just maddening. And if you're somebody who's got any kind of additional challenges around mental health or emotional regulation, it's just never going to give up. And it's just somebody who's kind of a bit more, to your point earlier, a bit more experienced and a bit more persistent, and is able to interact with the system in a way that perhaps the mentee can't or finds difficult.
To be honest, what I've found is recently I've had to help a mother who's Alzheimer's, and interacting with the system, for me, very simple. Whatever there is an online option, use it. That's basically the way I work. I do not interact with them on the telephone. I get online, I use their forms, job done. And if you can show somebody how to do that, then actually some of these things can be really easy.
I think a lot of it is, on my part anyway, like learned helplessness. You learn to not be able to do certain things or have a lack of independence. So when it does come to doing the things that you need to do, you don't want to do it or you just can't. So having a grand mentor there is like, for me, is someone to encourage you, to motivate you, to be honest and not sugarcoat things when it comes to dealing with the system and what you can do or what you can't do. And I think that's so important because after a while, if you have no one there to kind of sometimes tell you what to do, you're really not going to do it and you're going to get yourself into a lot of problems. And I feel like at the age that I'm in right now, I'm so grateful for that help because I know that nobody else could kind of support me in that way. Maybe not my professionals that are involved in my care or friends or family, and it's important to have somebody like that because it can get you into serious trouble, and I don't think people realise that enough. But yeah, it's very important.
Yes, so obviously I'm not a mentor or a mentee or anything like that. And I think it really speaks to the points that are being made right now is that, for example, within my own role, what I find is that it's very important to mentor the caregivers and give them like advice and keep it real with them as well. So because I have my own care experience, sometimes I'll use examples of my own experience around facing rent arrears and stuff like that and explain how I got to there to help them to avoid making those same bad decisions. So for example, deciding that, all my friends are going to Ibiza and I need a holiday too, but they can afford to go on holiday because they can live at home with their parents, but I'm living by myself and I've got to pay rent. So do you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to pay my rent next month and I'm going to go Ibiza this month And what I found was I just got myself into rent arrears, and it became like a snowball effect. But it was also because you hadn't been taught those skills to prioritize, to budget and manage your money and understand your money as well. So those skills are so important. And sometimes it's all well and good. You can cook, you can clean, you can look after your home, but my emotional well-being, my financial management, what about all of that stuff? And now we still continue to hear it from care leavers, financial management, emotional well-being. And it's like, why are we continuing to miss these points? And how are we moving forward from that and making changes? So even if we can think about, actually, can we provide them options in how they prepare for their independence? So whether that's training programs, resource packs, give them the options, because everyone also learns differently. And that's where the relationships are also important. Understanding how your young person is. How do they communicate? What support do they actually need? What's their social interactions like? Because once you understand them, then you can actually work together.
Thank you. So I guess you mentioned a few things actually, like as mentors, what you may have learned from your mentees. What would you say as mentors has been one of the biggest lessons you think you've learned from working with your mentee?
It's about a lesson, but like the biggest insight that I've found is how different challenges overlap and reinforce each other, become more and more difficult. So if it's like, if somebody has any kind of mental health problem, that makes it harder for them to access or to interact with the system. Because, it's just like more challenging to do with the bureaucracy, and then that means they don't necessarily have access to the right healthcare or financial support. And then those things just reinforce and things get worse and worse and worse, and it's quite hard to break out of that. Actually, how many people leave care every year in Lewisham?
So it's about 150 young people in care. There's 649 caregivers currently being supported by Lewisham Council. So there's about 150 in every year.
The reason I asked was because Grandmentors is great, but there's not 150 of them.
Yeah.
More Grandmentors, maybe.
No, but that's why someone said about the hub.
More of them.
That's what it means. Young people with young people. That's what it is. I get it, the grandmasters, but it's young people that need to talk to other young people. Because just speaking to the other young people here today, it's like, well, I want to get your number. I want to get your Instagram so we can divulge into this and see how we can actually make it better for the young people in Lewisham. Because if I genuinely had some of this help, I don't think I would be in certain situations that I'm in now. So to think of that and to help the younger generation, it's like, yeah, we need to, us young people need to keep in contact and actually talk.
So then it's about enabling care leaders to help each other, and then that gives you the scale that you need to actually support.
And then those grandmasters can help, but it's more the mental, the young people. Yeah.
It's like Grandmentors, like leading the way for that next generation of mentors who are then mentoring them. Yeah.
It's just like a chain. There needs to be a chain, that bridge.
You need those 4 or 5 generations working together.
Yes, absolutely.
Well, thank you everyone for all your insight. We've talked a lot today. We've spoken about the care cliff. We've spoken about mentoring experiences. And as we know, care experienced young people are some of the most resilient people in society. And there's a lot more work to be done, but it's been really a privilege to hear your thoughts, your experts by experience. So thank you for sharing your time today, and thanks for listening.
Thank you.
Thank you.